this inner conversation plays out with others. So in regards to a video that I released last week, Thoughts Create Reality, later on in the evening, I went for a walk. I usually like to go for an evening walk. And I remember saying to myself, it's been a while since I have been recognized in person from this channel. Every now and then I do get recognized. People show up, more so when I'm in California. So I continued on my walk, and one of the beliefs that I've integrated with to a deeper degree is that people show up saying the same things that I imagine. And I also say they show up in harmony and in contribution to my definite chief aim. And I'm also in harmony and in contribution to their goals, their visions. And so I ended up walking into a store, and this woman beside me, we engaged in conversation. And she says, "Your voice sounds familiar." And so I said, maybe it's my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. And she said, "Are you Joseph Rodriguez?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said that about an hour ago, she was listening to the video that I released, Thoughts Create Reality. And so we got into a very interesting conversation about entrepreneurship, applying this information, maintaining flow. And I mentioned that one of the reasons why I keep encouraging this conversation, that the inner conversation that we have plays out with others, is that by accepting that suggestion, we're actually able to see it more so. And here it is also playing out in interaction. What was also playing out, what we also discussed, was a lot of connectivity on different things that we were thinking about. And so I thought that was an interesting experience. And also, that same week, Daniel, who does my thumbnails, and I'm thinking Daniel will probably end up creating me more thumbnails because he sees me reincorporating some of the same art that he created. So interesting, shortly after that, he emails me and he sends me 6 new thumbnails for me to use, including one that I used for last Sunday's Neville Goddard conversation. And so I thanked him, and when I replied back to his email, I mentioned what I was thinking, in which he replied back here. I'm pulling up his email here. He says, "That's awesome. I remember I was walking on the beach on Tuesday, and I thought, I think I should go home and make Joseph some thumbnails. So I must have picked up your transmission in real time. So cool. They flowed together pretty nicely." And today, to further encourage this, so this experience can be something that we all can enjoy, which is people play out our ideal inner conversations from the premise of the fulfilled desire. I would like to discuss Neville's Law of Thought Transmission chapter from one of my favorite books, Prayer, the Art of Believing. So he says, when you emerge from prayer, you no longer seek, for you have. And so this is beyond trying to get a response, rather accepting the suggestion. And for me, what I narrowed it down to is the feeling. I am that way now, whatever it is that I'm implying, in a way that feels natural. We want to find our own way that feels natural and authentic to us. For me, it's autosuggestion, or I can feel a certain way. I noticed this also in relation to the video that I released on Thursday in regards to William Walker Atkinson's work, in which I mentioned that through working with this information, I'm able to instantaneously switch states of mind through suggestion through inner conversation. Also, I noticed that if I feel a certain way, I can switch into a different feeling by suggesting to myself, that's the way I feel now. I believe that prayer and meditation has helped me tremendously with this ability. It has helped me release from identification to certain states of mind, whatever states of mind that I consider to be of disharmony, by being first consciously aware that I'm in that state of mind. And by implying something to myself that my vision is reality now, I notice that I feel differently. Now, I've had many conversations with others in this regard. I was looking at my own experiences and also the experiences that they shared. And we seem to have a commonality, and this might be true for you. It seemed that in the earlier stages of applying this information, it was a lot more challenging to do this. As a result of applying this information through reference experience, it started to become easier. And so let's explore the chapter, Law of Thought Transmission, to contribute. So I've broken it down into 3 aspects. Number 1, how you assume it to be. Number 2, quiet confidence. And number 3, beyond limitations. So he says, your beliefs, your fixed attitudes of mind, constantly modify your consciousness as it is reflected on the mirror of your mind. Your consciousness, modified by your beliefs, objectifies itself in the conditions of your world. So we recognize then, our outer world is our consciousness objectified. And so he says, to change your world, you must first change your conception of it. So the conception that I have of my world is that people show up playing out in conversation, in behavioral patterns, in contribution, some way, somehow, in my personal life, in my business life, all areas of my life, reflecting the exact inner conversations that I have with myself. And we do this all day long in a lighthearted, loving, effortless way in relation to how I truly desire to be, in mutual harmony and in contribution. Through the reference experience, these have become, as he says here, your beliefs and fixed attitudes of mind. It started off by happening once in a while, and it started to happen more so with a higher degree of precision. And so I like this quiet confidence in reference to this quote here. He says, the word spoken subjectively in quiet confidence will always awaken a corresponding state in the one in whom it was spoken, permitting the one in whom the state is realized to remain in the consciousness of the state affirmed. Whatever state has your attention holds your life. To become attentive to a former state is to return to that condition. The wonderful thing is that when we practice this information, and then we look at our reference experiences and we see how these things happen, as we further encourage them and say, that's how our reality works, what ends up happening is that ends up being our beliefs, attitudes of mind, core beliefs that actually express itself authentically in our conversations, in our communication, in how we relate with others, and how they relate with us. And we can parallel this over to our Thursday's conversation with respects to William Walker Atkinson's work, in which he speaks about the magnetic state. So in regards, as he says here, your consciousness is the light reflected on the mirror of your mind and projected in space to the one whom you think. So I always recommend further encouraging the ideal reference experiences that you have in your life of how it works. And as you continue to encourage it, they become the conception of how you believe reality to work. And you'll notice then, from this premise, everything happens effortlessly, automatically, authentically, body seems to flow. One of the things that can help us in this journey is to recognize that with imagination, we can recognize our completion. A person can imagine anything that they truly desire, and in their imagination, they can accept that as reality. And through that acceptance of that being the reality, they feel complete. As they work with this information, they will recognize that they were always complete within. I say this all throughout the videos. There's no need to shame or condemn ourselves to imagine what we truly love. This is a natural way of being. This is what I also refer to when I speak of flow, bliss, which also, physically speaking, as we experience bliss, there also happens to be a neurotransmitter released in the brain called anandamide. And ananda, where the word anandamide comes from, is from the Sanskrit word for bliss, ananda. And so what we want to encourage, and we can encourage this in imagination, is that you are complete inside. All of these experiences exist inside of you already. Authentically, from the self-acceptance, we allow ourselves to be. And so in my relationships and friendships in my past, I noticed that I would walk around imagining them in ways that would imply rejected. When I felt this rejection, which was what I was suggesting to myself in regards to the experience, I would further imagine people from that perspective. And as he says here, your consciousness is the light reflected on the mirror of your mind and projected in the space to the one whom you think. And I would notice whatever implied as the rejection-based, I'm not accepted-based theater play out in relationships with others in my personal life and business life. And so what we do is we imagine ourselves, we imagine others, whatever implies, as he had also brought up many times, Philippians 4:8. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. So in Philippians 4:8, it's actually suggesting what to include in our prayers or autosuggestion so we can actually feel it inside, this completion inside, and observe how our relationships change as a result of it. How we relate to others and how they relate to us change as a result of it. And so what we're doing is accepting the suggestion of love or completion inside. As we discussed in Thursday's video, it might appear that the cause of the feeling is outside in how we relate to, let's say, rejection. As in, this person made me feel this way. Therefore, I felt rejected by them. And so we bring this into a nice center. We recognize that we're giving form based on what we identify with, the thoughts, the beliefs, the attitudes of mind. And so if a person brought themselves to a completion, whatever way, for me it's the reminder that everything exists within me. Everything exists within me. I have everything now. I have everything now. Anything I imagine, I have. And so Neville's work is very powerful when it comes to recognizing completion. Because whenever we have a desire, we can imagine what implies that you are that person now. It's inside of you. It's already yours. It's done. And we feel complete. And everything from this consciousness of completion, as he says here, objectifies itself in the conditions of your world. We actually then observe as these harmonious experiences play out because they are just that, harmonious, as in harmony within, expressed or reflected as harmony without. And so in regards, I really like this quote here. He says, distance, as it is cognized by your objective senses, does not exist for the subjective mind. Time and space are conditions of thought. The imagination can transcend them and move in a psychological time and space. And isn't it wonderful how I went for a walk, and when I started my walk, which was about an hour before interacting with her, and so I want to give a shout out to Lauren, an hour before interacting with her, I had that thought. And so it happens to be that she's listening to Thoughts Creating Reality, in which I'm saying these things in that video. I'll put a link in the description to it. And isn't it wonderful how I had this thought of Daniel on the same day? It appears to be at the same time that he also had a similar thought. And also, isn't it wonderful that it all plays out in a mutually harmonious way? And so this is why I always suggest, and we can relate this over to also the Dr. Millikan affirmation that Neville had suggested, which is also familiar to Philippians 4:8. And so he says, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with mutual integrity and benefit. When a person accepts a suggestion like that, people show up. Clients, team members, vendors, business partners, relationships, friends, in mutual harmony and in contribution both ways, because that's what we're suggesting. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with mutual integrity and benefit. So a person can say, I have a loving, romantic relationship. Whatever you want, whatever you desire, as I mentioned earlier, release the shame and condemnation in imagination and allow your imagination to soar like it was divinely designed to do. As Earl Nightingale had mentioned in The Strangest Secret, allow your mind to soar as it was divinely designed to do. And you could say it to yourself, I have a loving relationship consistent with mutual integrity in the spirit of harmony. I have fun, joyous, collaborative, inspiring friends, consistent with mutual integrity and benefit. And what I notice then when I accept a suggestion like that and enter into that state is inner conversation seems to automatically play out. When I look back at those conversations that played out with Lauren, with Daniel, those are automatic inner conversation aspects in regards to a higher state, which Neville referred to as imagine being ecstatic, in which he was asked a question, is it possible to imagine several things at the same time, or should I confine my imagining to one desire? In which he responded, personally, I like to confine my imaginal act to a single thought, but that doesn't mean that I will stop there. During the course of the day, I may imagine many things, and I'm finding that these related things seem to be one long internal conversation dialogue that seems to start in the morning when I wake up and continue all the way till I go to sleep, and it seems to happen automatically as I relate over to the Steve Jobs commencement speech. Listen to your inner voice, transcend into opinions. And by working with this information, you'll find that you'll listen to yourself to a higher degree. And so he says, I would suggest that you imagine something so big it would include all the little things. Imagine being ecstatic. He says you could not be ecstatic if you were not enjoying a full measure of friendship and love. What would the feeling be like were you ecstatic? We can accept the completion and feel it now, which I relate over to bliss. He says, reduce this idea of ecstasy to a single sensation. Isn't it wonderful? Do not allow the conscious reasoning mind to ask why, because perhaps if it does, it might start looking for visible causes, overthinking this and that. Rather, repeat over and over again, isn't it wonderful? He says, catch the one sensation of the wonder of it all, and all things will happen to bear witness of the truth of this sensation. And I promise you, it will include all the little things. And I have full faith that you too will have these experiences as you desire. You are complete inside. All things exist within you. What you imagine in relation to what you desire, you already have. And through the acceptance, those things happen automatically. When you emerge from prayer, you no longer seek, for you have. Very important distinction, and I believe it's one of the key important elements of all of Neville's information. When you emerge from prayer, you no longer seek, for you have. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I am complete inside. I have all that I desire. Everything happens effortlessly. Everything happens automatically. I am in flow. I am in bliss, in relationship with people, in all areas of my life, in the spirit of love and mutual harmony. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.